I'm Clara, 32, a woman, and I'm standing in the middle of what was supposed to be our shared future. A home filled with blueprints and dreams. Knowing that my fiancée, the woman I trusted with my whole heart, is planning to marry me only to divorce me for my money. And in just a few days, at our rehearsal dinner, everyone else is going to know it too. It all started with a single, sensible conversation. A conversation that in my mind was about protecting us, but in hers was the perfect opportunity to begin her final act. We were in the kitchen of the house I'd bought 2 years ago, a spacious craftsman I was slowly renovating myself. Sunlight streamed through the large window over the sink, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and catching the brilliant sparkle of the diamond on Chloe's finger. She was leaning against the marble countertop, scrolling through a wedding blog on her tablet, a small, happy smile on her face. "What do you think about peonies instead of roses for the centerpieces?" she asked, not looking up. "I saw the most beautiful arrangements today." My heart did a familiar little flip. For 2 years, this was my life, these simple domestic moments with Chloe. I loved the way she'd move into a space and instantly make it hers, the way she cared about the small details, the way her presence made my house finally feel like a home. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder to look at the screen. "Peonies sound beautiful," I said, my voice soft. This was it, this was the moment. My lawyer's words were echoing in my ears, sensible and pragmatic. My parents had said the same thing more gently. "Clara, you've worked so hard, your patent sale was life-changing, it's just smart planning." I took a breath. "Chloe, honey, can we talk about something for a second? It's a bit serious." She turned in my arms, her expression shifting from carefree to concerned. "Of course, what is it? You look worried." "It's not a big deal," I started, already fumbling. "It's just with the wedding coming up and with the money from the patent sale finally clearing, my lawyer brought something up. He thinks it would be a good idea for us to sign a prenuptial agreement." The word hung in the sunlit air between us, suddenly heavy and ugly. The warmth in Chloe's eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, glassy sheen of disbelief. She slowly pulled away from my embrace, creating a chasm that felt miles wide. "A prenup," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It was so much quieter than I expected, which somehow made it worse. "You want me to sign a piece of paper that says you're already planning for our divorce?" "No, that's not it at all," I said quickly, stepping forward, my hands outstretched. "It's not about us, it's a legal formality, it's to protect the business assets, the patent. It protects you too, it makes sure everything is clear." Tears began to well in her eyes and my stomach plummeted. "Clear?" she said, her voice trembling with what I thought was profound hurt. "What needs to be clearer, Clara? That you have money and I do? That after everything we've been through, after all the promises we've made, you still see me as some kind of risk? You don't trust me?" It wasn't a question, it was a statement, an accusation that struck me right in the chest. Of course I trusted her. I trusted her more than anyone. I remembered the night we met at a gallery opening she was curating. I was there as the architect for the gallery's new wing. I was awkward and out of my element, but she'd sought me out. She de-listened with such intensity as I talked about sustainable design and building materials. She made me feel like the most interesting person in the world. She saw past my work-focused exterior and found the person underneath. I thought about the first time she'd met my parents. They were reserved, practical people, always a bit skeptical of outsiders, but Chloe had charmed them completely. She brought my mother a rare orchid, remembering a passing comment I'd made weeks earlier. She engaged my father in a long discussion about his woodworking hobby, her eyes wide with genuine fascination. She had won them over instantly. In hindsight, I see the precision of her performance, the careful, targeted affection. But at the time, all I saw was the woman I loved fitting seamlessly into my life. Her financial situation was never a secret. Her work as a curator was her passion, but it was not lucrative. She had student loans and credit card debt, a fact she'd confessed to me early on with tears in her eyes, telling me she felt ashamed. I had felt a surge of protectiveness. I'd told her it didn't matter, that we were a team. I'd quietly paid off her largest debts a few months later as a birthday surprise. She wept with gratitude, telling me that no one had ever cared for her like that. She said she felt safe with me. I now realize she wasn't just talking out emotional safety. Chloe, that's not true, I pleaded in the kitchen, the memory of her past gratitude making me feel even more like a monster. I trust you with my life, this is just paperwork. It's not just paperwork to me, she cried, the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. It's a symbol, it's a sign that you're keeping one foot out the door. How can we stand up in front of our friends and family and promise, for richer or for poorer, if you've already hired a lawyer to make sure the poorer part only ever applies to me? It's like you don't even believe in us. The guilt was overwhelming, a physical weight pressing down on me. She was right. How could I do this? How could I reduce our beautiful, profound love to a series of clauses and financial disclosures? I was being cold. I was being selfish. I was letting the sudden influx of money poison the purest thing in my life. I closed the distance between us and pulled her into a tight hug. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against me, sobbing into my shoulder. You're right, I whispered, stroking her hair. You're completely right. It was a selfish, thoughtless idea. Forget I ever said it. There will be no prenup. There is only us. She pulled back, her face tear-streaked and vulnerable. Really? Really, I said, wiping a tear from her cheek with my thumb. I am so sorry I hurt you. I love you. I love you too, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I just want to be your wife, not your business partner. We held each other for a long time. I felt like I had just narrowly avoided a catastrophe, pulling our relationship back from the brink of a cliff I hadn't even seen. I felt relieved. But even as I held her, a tiny, cold splinter of doubt lodged itself in my heart. Her performance had been perfect. A little too perfect. In the days following the prenup conversation, Chloe was a vision of loving forgiveness. She was more affectionate than ever, leaving little notes in my work bag, preparing my favorite meals, and constantly touching me, a hand on my arm as we walked, a kiss on my cheek as I worked at my desk. On the surface, everything was perfect. We were back on track, hurtling towards our wedding day with renewed purpose, but the splinter of doubt remained and it began to fester. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had witnessed a performance. The way her tears had started perfectly timed, the way she had used the exact phrases, "You don't trust me," keeping one foot out the door, that would wound me most deeply. It felt less like a spontaneous emotional reaction and more like a well-rehearsed script. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my newfound wealth was making me cynical. I was letting the soulless advice of lawyers taint my perception of the woman I loved. To overcompensate for my own ugly thoughts, I leaned into the wedding planning with an almost frantic enthusiasm. "Whatever you want, honey," became my mantra. The expensive peonies Chloe wanted, of course, the high-end caterer whose tasting menu cost a fortune, they were worth every penny. The ridiculously priced venue with sweeping views of the city, we had to have it. With every purchase, I was trying to prove her right and my doubts wrong. See, I would tell myself, I'm all in. I trust her completely. Yet the doubt was a persistent, quiet hum beneath the surface of our happy preparations. I started noticing things I hadn't before, or perhaps things I had chosen to ignore. I noticed how Chloe's conversations with her friends, especially her maid of honor, Zoe, would stop abruptly whenever I entered a room. I'd walk in and they'd be huddled together, whispering excitedly, and then they'd spring apart, smiling brightly at me. "Just discussing bridesmaid dresses," Chloe would say a little too quickly. One evening, I came home early from a site visit and overheard Chloe on the phone in our bedroom. Her voice was different from the soft, gentle tone she used with me. It was sharp, businesslike. "No, the deposit has to be fully refundable until the final confirmation," she was saying. "Read the fine print. We need maximum flexibility. There can be no financial loose ends." I paused in the hallway, listening. It sounded like she was dealing with a wedding vendor. But her tone, it was so cold, so calculating. The moment she heard my keys in the door, her voice instantly changed. "Oh, that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for your help," she chirped into the phone before hanging up and greeting me with a brilliant smile. The incident was small, easily explained away, but it added another layer to my unease. My mind kept replaying the prenup argument. An architect who deals in contracts and clauses daily, had been made to feel like a villain for suggesting one. But here was Chloe, a romantic art curator, suddenly speaking like a seasoned contract lawyer over floral arrangements. It didn't add up. My sleep became restless. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my mind racing, staring at Chloe's peaceful, sleeping face beside me and feeling a profound sense of dislocation. Who was this woman? Did I really know her at all? The lack of sleep was affecting my work. I was distracted, on edge. It was this exhaustion that gave me the idea, the terrible, brilliant, gut-wrenching idea. I'm not sleeping well, I announced one morning over breakfast. Chloe looked up from her yogurt, her brow furrowed with concern. I know, honey, you've been tossing and turning all week. Is it wedding stress? Maybe, I lied. I was reading about these apps that record you at night. They listen for sleep talking or snoring to analyze your sleep patterns. I thought I'd try one. Maybe it'll help me figure out what's going on. Her concern looked completely genuine. Oh, Clara, that's a great idea. You need your rest. Does it record everything? I hope I don't say anything silly in my sleep. She laughed, a light, airy sound that made my stomach twist into a knot. I think it's just voice activated, I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. It only clicks on when it detects noise. That night, my heart hammered in my chest as I set it up. I downloaded a simple voice recording app onto my phone, one with a discreet interface. I didn't place it on the nightstand between us. That felt too obvious, too close. Instead, I left it in the living room, on the bookshelf behind a photo frame of us, a smiling, happy couple from a vacation we'd taken last year. I told Chloe I wanted to see if any noises from the street were waking me up, and that the living room was a better central point to capture the ambient sound of the house. She accepted it without a second thought. Good idea, I'll be extra quiet if I get up for water, she said, kissing me goodnight. As I lay in bed feigning sleep, I felt like the worst person on earth. I was spying on the woman I was supposed to spend my life with. I was poisoning everything with my suspicion. If she was innocent, I was committing a monumental betrayal of her trust. A betrayal far worse than suggesting a prenup. I almost got up a dozen times to go and delete the app to erase my paranoia and choose to live in blissful ignorance. But the cold splinter of doubt in my heart held me back. I had to know. I had to know if the woman sleeping peacefully beside me was the love of my life or a complete stranger. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling of dread. The sun was shining, Chloe was humming in the shower, and the world seemed determined to mock my dark internal storm. My phone was still on the bookshelf in the living room, an innocuous black rectangle holding a potentially life-shattering secret. For a moment, I considered just deleting the file. It was a long audio file over 8 hours. The thought of listening to hours of silence, punctuated by the occasional creak of the house or a passing car, suddenly seemed ridiculous. My paranoia felt foolish in the light of day. Chloe came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a fluffy white towel, her hair in a turban. She looked so beautiful, so normal. She smiled at me. "Did your little spy machine pick up any ghosts?" she teased. "I haven't checked yet," I said, my voice tight. "Probably just me snoring." She laughed and went to the closet to get dressed. I knew I had a small window. My hands trembled as I walked into the living room and picked up the phone. I opened the app and saw the single, long recording from the night before. My finger hovered over the delete button. Just press it, a part of my brain screamed. Press it and go back to being happy. But I couldn't, I had to know. I put in my earbuds, telling myself I'd just listen for a few minutes. I scrolled through the timeline, looking for any spikes in the sound wave. The first few hours were mostly flat, then around 1:30 a.m. there was a significant block of activity. My heart started to pound. I tapped the play button, my breath held tight in my chest. At first, I heard soft footsteps, the clink of a glass, and the sound of the patio door sliding open. It was Chloe. I heard her settle into one of the outdoor chairs, then the sound of a phone dialing. A moment later, another voice joined hers. It was Zoe, her maid of honor. "Hey, you're up late," Zoe's voice said, tinny through the phone's speaker. "I couldn't sleep," Chloe replied. Her voice was low, conspiratorial. It was the same sharp, businesslike tone I'd overheard in the hallway. "I just keep thinking about how close we are." "I know, 6 weeks, can you believe it?" Zoe sounded giddy. "Did you book that ridiculous caterer she wanted?" "She thinks she wanted it," Chloe said, and then she laughed. It was not her usual light, airy laugh. This was a sharp, knowing, cruel sound that made the blood freeze in my veins. I planted the idea weeks ago, showed her a blog post about their unforgettable culinary experience. Honestly, Zoe, it's like tack. Ing candy from a baby. She's so desperate to prove how much she trusts me after that little prenup stunt. My world tilted on its axis. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, my hand clamped over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Prenup stunt. She was calling my profound guilt and her supposed heartbreak a stunt. Zoe cackled on the other end of the line. You're a genius, Chloe, a complete evil genius. So what's the final timeline? What did your lawyer say? The lawyer was very clear, Chloe said, her voice dropping even lower. We have to stay married for a minimum of 2 years, 3 to be safe. We build a life, we document everything, joint accounts, shared assets, holiday photos with the family. We play the part of the perfect, happy couple, then something unfortunate happens. We grow apart. The spark fades. We have a very amicable, no-fault divorce. And because there's no prenup, Zoe prompted eagerly. And because there's no prenup, Chloe confirmed, and I could hear the smug smile in her voice, the assets are split right down the middle. The house, the investment accounts, everything, including the full remaining balance from her patent sale. By the time I'm 32, I'll be set for life. We'll be set for life. We'll be set for life. The words echoed in the empty cavern that had moments before been my chest. This wasn't just about Chloe. Zoe was in on it. Her best friend, my bridesmaid, the woman who had helped me pick out a wedding gift for Chloe just last week, was her co-conspirator. What if she gets suspicious again? Zoe asked. She won't, Chloe said with breathtaking confidence. I've got her right where I want her. She's so blinded by love and so terrified of seeming untrustworthy that she'd agree to anything I ask. I could tell her the sky was green and she'd start arguing with meteorologists. She thinks I'm this fragile, romantic artist. She has no idea I have a spine of steel. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Every memory, every shared moment of the past 2 years was flashing through my mind, instantly recontextualized and tainted. Our first meeting, was I targeted? The way she charmed my parents, was it a calculated campaign? Paying off her debts, was I just a fool she was reeling in? The love I felt, which had been the bedrock of my world, was a sham. It was a business transaction, and I was the mark. You're amazing, Zoe breathed. I can't wait for all this to be over. Cancun, here we come. Patience, my friend, Chloe said. We have to put on the performance of a lifetime first. I should go. I think I heard her stir. Don't want my dear, sweet, trusting fiancé to wake up and find me gone. The call ended. I heard the patio door slide shut and her soft footsteps heading back toward the bedroom. I sat there frozen, the earbuds still in my ears, listening to the recording of my own heart being systematically, gleefully ripped to shreds. The shock was a physical blow, leaving me breathless. Then came the pain, a white-hot, all-consuming agony that felt like it was dissolving me from the inside out. I was not a person. I was a project. I was a bank account. I ripped the earbuds out and stared at the photo on the bookshelf, the two of us smiling in the sun. My arm was around her and she was looking up at me with an expression of pure adoration, an expression she had practiced, an expression that was a lie. In that moment, the pain began to cool, solidifying into something else, something hard, cold, and heavy. It was the feeling of resolve. She wanted a performance, I would give her one. The next few weeks were the most difficult of my life. I had to construct a mask of serene, blissful love and wear it every single moment I was with Chloe. The truth was a roaring inferno in my gut, but on the outside, I had to be the calm, devoted fiancé she believed me to be. Every morning, I woke up next to her and had to fight the urge to recoil. Every time she kissed me, I had to force myself not to flinch. Every "I love you" she uttered was a sharp jab, and every "I love you too" I returned was a carefully crafted lie that tasted like ash in my mouth. My first instinct after hearing the recording was to confront her, to throw the phone at her feet and watch her face as she heard her own treachery, but I quickly realized how foolish that would be. Chloe was a master manipulator. She would deny it. She would claim it was a joke, a silly fantasy she and Zoe were playing out. She would twist it around, accuse me of spying, of violating her privacy, of being the one who had destroyed all trust. She would cry, and she would be so convincing that even with the evidence in my hand, a part of me might still doubt. No, a private confrontation would give her control. I couldn't allow that. The betrayal wasn't private. It was a calculated, long-term conspiracy. The humiliation she planned for me was a quiet, slow burn ending in a lawyer's office years from now. The exposure, I decided, had to be public, it had to be undeniable. It had to happen in front of the very people she was trying to fool, our families and our friends. The rehearsal dinner, it was the perfect stage. And so my performance began. I became the most attentive, doting partner imaginable. I left work early to go with her to a cake tasting. I sat there sampling buttercream and raspberry filling, smiling and nodding as she and the baker discussed tiers and fondant. I watched her, marveling at her skill. She looked at me with such apparent love, asking for my opinion, making me feel included. All the while, I could hear her voice from the recording in my head. It's like taking candy from a baby. "What do you think, honey?" she asked, holding a forkful of red velvet cake up to my lips. "Is this one the winner?" I met her gaze, forcing a warm smile onto my face. "It's incredible," I said, my voice smooth and even, "but not as sweet as you." Her eyes crinkled in a delighted smile. "You're such a sap," she said, leaning in to kiss me. It felt like being kissed by a snake. The most challenging part was interacting with our families. My parents would call, excited, asking about the final preparations. "Chloe is handling everything," I'd tell them. "She's amazing." And they would gush about how lucky I was to have found such a wonderful, dedicated woman. Every word of praise was a turn of the knife. Her parents were even worse. They were good, honest people from a small town who genuinely believed their daughter had found the love of her life. They adored me. When they came to visit one weekend, Chloe's mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Clara, I just want to thank you," she said, her eyes misty. "I've never seen Chloe so happy. You take such good care of our girl." I felt a pang of actual guilt, not for my plan, but for what they were about to go through. They were victims in this, too, collateral damage in their daughter's elaborate scheme. "She takes good care of me, too," I managed to say, my throat tight. Even Zoe, the co-conspirator, played her part to perfection. As the maid of honor, she was a constant presence. She came over to help with seating charts, her expression one of bubbly, friendly support. She'd look at me and Chloe together and sigh. "You two are just the cutest," she'd say. "You give us all hope." I would smile back at her, a placid, calm smile, all the while picturing the look on her face when she heard her own voice conspiring to ruin my life broadcast to a room full of people. The thought was a small, cold comfort that kept me going. Living a double life was exhausting. To cope, I threw myself into the one thing that felt real, my work. In my studio, surrounded by drawings and models, I could let the mask drop. The anger and the grief would wash over me in waves. I funneled it all into my designs, working with a ferocious, focused energy. But I also used my work as an excuse, a way to create distance and to secretly prepare. I told Chloe I had to pull a few all-nighters to meet a deadline. In reality, I was in my office, meticulously planning my revenge. The late nights I spent in my office, supposedly buried under blueprints for a new commercial project, were actually dedicated to a single, much more personal design, the perfect, unbreakable execution of my plan. My anger had cooled from a raging fire into a focused blue flame. I was no longer just a victim, I was the architect of Chloe's downfall, and I would approach it with the same precision and attention to detail that I brought to my buildings. My first step was to secure the evidence. The audio file on my phone was my weapon, and it needed to be protected. I downloaded it to my encrypted work computer, then made 3 separate backups on different USB drives, which I stored in secure locations, one in my safe at the office, one in a safe deposit box at my bank, and one I sent via courier to my lawyer with a note that said, "For safekeeping. Do not open unless you receive a specific code from me." Paranoia had become my closest ally. Next, I had to edit the file. The original recording was over 8 hours long. I needed to isolate the damning conversation, which was about 15 minutes in total. Using simple audio editing software, I carefully clipped the section of the call between Chloe and Zoe. I didn't alter it in any way, I just removed the long stretches of silence before and after. I listened to it over and over again, each time hardening my resolve. The casual cruelty in their voices, the smug laughter, it was the fuel I needed to see this through. The technical logistics of playing the recording at the rehearsal dinner required careful thought. I couldn't just stand up and play it from my phone. The sound would be tinny, easily dismissed. It needed to be clear, crisp, and unavoidable. The restaurant we'd booked for the dinner was a high-end place with a private room equipped with a state-of-the-art audiovisual system. For presentations, Chloe had chosen it, ironically, because she said it was so professional and chic. I called the restaurant's event coordinator, posing as a diligent fiancé wanting to prepare a surprise for my bride-to-be. I'm putting together a short video montage of our relationship to play during my toast, I lied smoothly. Could you tell me about the AV setup? I want to make sure my file is compatible. The coordinator was incredibly helpful. She explained they had a ceiling-mounted projector, a large retractable screen, and a sound system connected to a central lectern. All I needed to do was bring a USB drive with the file. It was perfect. A video montage was the perfect cover. I even spent an evening creating a decoy file, a saccharine slideshow of photos of me and Chloe set to cheesy romantic music. This would be on the same USB drive, a plan B in case anyone asked to see it beforehand. My real file was simply the audio, which I would pair with a single static image on the screen, a beautiful professional engagement photo of us smiling blissfully. The contrast between the happy image and the horrifying audio would be devastating. In the midst of my secret preparations, I had a discreet meeting with my lawyer. I told him everything. I played him the recording. He sat back in his leather chair, his usual calm, professional demeanor cracking for just a moment as a look of genuine shock crossed his face. Well, he said, taking off his glasses and rubbing his eyes. In 25 years of practicing family law, I've heard some things, but this is in a class of its own. He confirmed my fears that a private confrontation would have been useless. He also commended my plan for the public reveal, though he warned me of the potential for a messy, emotional fallout. We spent the next hour discussing strategy. He advised me on how to legally and officially call off the wedding, how to immediately freeze any joint accounts we had set up for wedding expenses, and how to change the locks on my house. He drafted a series of legal notices to be served to Chloe the day after the rehearsal dinner, formally severing all ties and making it clear that any attempt to claim assets would be met with the full force of the evidence I possessed. Leaving his office, I felt a sense of calm control I hadn't felt in weeks. My path was clear, every logistical detail was in place. The trap was set, now all I had to do was walk my happy, unsuspecting fiancé right into it, smiling all the way. The thought brought me no joy, only a grim, steely satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about justice. It was about taking back the narrative and exposing the truth before it could destroy me. The evening of the rehearsal dinner felt like a scene from a movie, and I felt like a spectator watching my own life unfold. The private room at the restaurant was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city lights, tables draped in crisp white linen, and the soft glow of candlelight everywhere. About 40 of our closest friends and family were there, their faces beaming, their laughter echoing in the warm, celebratory air. It was a perfect picture of love and happiness, a beautifully constructed illusion that I was about to shatter. Chloe was radiant. She wore a chic white dress and had her hair styled in an elegant updo. She floated around the room, a gracious hostess and a blushing bride-to-be, accepting compliments and hugs. She kept shooting me dazzling smiles from across the room, and I would smile back, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. Every loving glance was a lie. Every laugh was a performance. I sat between my mother and Chloe's father. My mom kept squeezing my hand under the table. "I'm so proud of you, Clara," she whispered. "Look at this life you've built. Look at this wonderful woman you've found." I just nodded, unable to speak, the hypocrisy of the moment burning in my throat. The dinner itself was a blur. Speeches were made. My father gave a short, heartfelt toast about watching me grow into a strong, independent woman. He welcomed Chloe to the family with a warmth that made me ache for the pain he would soon feel. Then Zoe, the maid of honor, the co-conspirator, stood up. She raised her champagne flute, her face a mask of sincere friendship. "To Clara and Chloe," she began, her voice brimming with fake emotion. "I have known Chloe for almost 10 years, and I have never ever seen her as happy as she is with Clara. Clara, you have brought out a light in my best friend that is truly beautiful to see. You are both so lucky to have found each other. Your love is an inspiration. She looked right at me, a beatific smile on her face. We are all so thrilled to be celebrating with you, to the happy couple. The room erupted in applause and cheers of to the happy couple. I met Zoe's eyes across the room and raised my glass to her in a silent toast of my own. My hand was perfectly steady. Finally, it was my turn. Chloe's father, who was acting as the evening's informal MC, stood up. And now a few words from Clara herself. I felt a hush fall over the room as I walked to the lectern at the front. I felt Chloe's adoring gaze on me. I took the USB drive from my pocket and inserted it into the laptop connected to the AV system. I clicked on the file, the one with the engagement photo. The image of us, smiling and in love, filled the large screen behind me. There were a few appreciative ahs from the audience. I took a deep breath and leaned into the microphone. Thank you all for being here, I began, my voice clear and strong. This is a momentous occasion. Marriage is built on many things, but I believe the most important of all are trust and honesty. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I looked at Chloe, who was gazing at me, her eyes shining. Trust is believing in your partner completely, I continued. It's feeling safe enough to be your most vulnerable self, and honesty is the bedrock that makes that trust possible. It's about sharing your true feelings, your true intentions. Before we all raise a glass to our future, I wanted to share something with you. I have a message from Chloe herself that I think truly, honestly, captures her feelings about this marriage and our future together. I think her own words will speak for themselves. A flicker of confusion crossed Chloe's face, but it was quickly replaced by a pleased, expectant smile. She probably thought I'd recorded a sweet message from her at some point. I looked out at the sea of friendly, smiling faces. My family, her family, our friends. And then I pressed play. For a second, there was only silence. Then Chloe's voice, her real voice, the cold, calculating one, filled the room, crystal clear through the high-end speakers. Honestly, Zoe, it's like taking candy from a baby. She's so desperate to prove how much she trusts me after that little prenup stunt. A collective gasp went through the room. I saw Chloe's face. The color drained from it instantly. Her smile froze, then crumbled. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, wide with pure, unadulterated panic. Zoe looked like she had been turned to stone, her champagne flute trembling in her hand. The recording continued, relentless. We have to stay married for a minimum of 2 years, 3 to be safe. Then something unfortunate happens, we grow apart. And because there's no prenup, the assets are split right down the middle. By the time I'm 32, I'll be set for life. We'll be set for life. Zoe's gleeful laughter echoed through the silent room, a grotesque counterpoint to the horror dawning on everyone's faces. Chloe's parents were staring at the screen, their expressions a mixture of confusion and disbelief. My own parents were looking at me, their faces pale with shock and dawning understanding. The final lines played. She thinks I'm this fragile, romantic artist. She has no idea I have a spine of steel. Don't want my dear, sweet, trusting fiancé to wake up and find me gone. The audio ended, silence descended, thick and suffocating. All eyes were on Chloe. She was ghostly white, her mouth opening and closing silently, no words coming out. Zoe had buried her face in her hands. I stepped back up to the microphone, my voice devoid of all emotion. So a toast, I said into the dead quiet. To honesty, to trust, and to spines of steel, I raised my glass. The wedding, of course, is off. I turned off the microphone, took the USB drive from the laptop, and walked away from the lectern, not looking at anyone. The silence finally broke, erupting into a cacophony of gasps, angry muttering, and the sound of Chloe's mother letting out a strangled sob. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I just walked out of the room, out of the restaurant, and into the cool night air, leaving the wreckage of my past behind me. The days that followed were a whirlwind of controlled chaos. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from nearly everyone who had been in that room, a torrent of shock, sympathy, and outrage on my behalf. I ignored most of them, letting my parents and a few close friends act as gatekeepers. They rallied around me with a quiet, fierce loyalty that felt like a lifeline in the storm. The morning after the dinner, as planned, a courier delivered a set of legal documents to the hotel where Chloe and her family were staying. The papers officially canceled all wedding contracts, stated in no uncertain terms that our engagement was terminated due to fraudulent inducement, and warned against any attempt to contact me or lay claim to any assets. My lawyer had also included a copy of the audio file on a sealed drive, a final, unspoken message. I know everything. Oh, do not test me. The fallout for Chloe and Zoe was, from what I heard, swift and brutal. Chloe's parents were mortified and ashamed. They called my father to offer a tearful, broken apology on behalf of his family. They left the city the next day. Chloe, I heard through the grapevine, had become a social pariah overnight. The story of her public humiliation spread like wildfire through our social circles. Many of the friends who had fawned over her were the same ones now sharing the story with relish. Zoe, too, faced the consequences, losing friends and her reputation in one fell swoop. There was no grand confrontation. Chloe never tried to call or see me. There was nothing she could say. I had taken away her power by taking away her ability to lie. All she was left with was the truth, and it had ruined her. For me, there was no feeling of triumph. There was no joy in her destruction. There was only a vast, hollow relief. It was the feeling of a surgeon who has just completed a long and difficult operation to remove a sickness. The procedure was painful and bloody, but it was necessary for survival. I systematically dismantled the life we were supposed to build. I canceled the joint bank account. I had the locks on my house changed. I boxed up every item she owned, her clothes, her books, her art, and had them sent to her parents' address. Erasing her presence from my home was a strange, methodical process. With each item I packed away, it felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. The last thing I packed was the framed photo from the bookshelf, the one I had used on the screen at the dinner. I looked at our smiling faces one last time, then I slid it into a box and sealed the lid. Weeks turned into a month. The raw, open wound of the betrayal began to scar over. The anger faded, leaving behind a deep and abiding sadness. I wasn't just mourning the end of a relationship, I was mourning the person I was before. The open, trusting, slightly naive woman who could love so completely without suspicion. I wasn't sure if I would ever be that person again. But as I stood in my quiet, renovated home, a home that was once again solely mine, I also felt a flicker of something else. Strength. I had trusted my instincts. I had protected myself. I had faced the ugliest of truths and had not only survived but had emerged stronger, wiser, and more in control of my own destiny. And so, to anyone listening who might be in a similar situation, who feels that small, cold splinter of doubt in their heart, I say this: listen to it. Your intuition is your guardian. Trusting someone is a beautiful thing, but true trust can withstand questions. True love does not crumble when faced with practicality. Do not let anyone use your love as a weapon against you or make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Your security, both emotional and financial, is not a sign of a lack of faith. It is a sign of self-respect. I learned that lesson in the most brutal way imaginable, but it's a lesson I will carry with me forever. I walked through fire, but I did not let it consume me. I am the architect of my own life, and from these ashes I will build something new, something stronger, and something true.